Welcome to the first session of this year's Walking Your Cancer Path With You webinar series. I'm Samantha Schrager. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Impact Initiatives at Cancer Hope Network. And I'm thrilled to have you here as we welcome our friends at Rosalynn Carter Institute for Caregiving to lead us in an impactful and valuable training session. Before we begin, I'd like to take a brief moment and introduce Marielle McLeod, Cancer Hope Network's Director of Programs and Advocacy, who's joining us as well tonight. Many of you may already know Marielle as she leads and facilitates our mentor training sessions and ensures that our volunteers feel confident and prepared to take on their roles. So with tonight's session, we're excited to add another valuable skill to that training arsenal, further strengthening the support that our mentors provide. So thank you, Marielle, for being here and for all you do for our mentors. At Cancer Hope Network, we believe that no one should face cancer alone. We provide free one-on-one peer mentorship for patients, survivors, and caregivers, connecting them with trained volunteers who understand their journey. But beyond mentorship, we're committed to training and collaboration, ensuring that those offering support, whether they're mentors, caregivers, or healthcare professionals, feel confident and prepared to make a meaningful impact. When we invest in education and partnerships, we empower individuals with the skills they need to build trust, provide compassionate guidance, and strengthen the support networks available to those facing cancer. We are committed to the network in our name and grateful to work with such incredible organizations who can help address the many other needs of those facing cancer. And that is why we're excited to collaborate with the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Caregiving for tonight's session on virtual empathy, an essential skill in an increasingly digital world. We know that displaying empathy in face-to-face interactions is already a challenge. And when the support moves to virtual spaces, building trust and meaningful connections can become even more complex. So this training will help us explore the importance of virtual empathy, practical strategies for demonstrating it, and the challenges of maintaining emotional connection and healthy boundaries in online settings. So we're honored to have Lezlie Poole leading this training. Lezlie is the Innovation Manager at RCI and brings extensive experience in mental health, caregiver support, and program development. She holds certifications as a certified peer specialist, a certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner, and over the years, she's played a key role in developing and implementing crisis resolution programs, supporting caregivers through evidence-based initiatives, and collaborating with organizations like the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and FEMA to develop caregiver-focused resources. So through this interactive session, Lezlie will guide us in understanding how to successfully demonstrate virtual empathy, recognize emotional cues, and maintain healthy digital boundaries, ensuring that we can continue to provide compassionate and effective support no matter where we are. And a final thank you to all of you for being here and for your dedication to fostering connection and support in the cancer community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lezlie to get us started. And the room's all yours, Lezlie. You are muted.
Yes. Do I need to spotlight myself, Sam?
I'm going to do it right
Okay,
now.
good. Somebody with more technology knowledge than me. So grateful, so grateful. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for spending some of your time today wherever you are. So I am in the great and fabulous state of Georgia. I'm in rural South Georgia. I am in the hometown of President Carter and Mrs. Carter. This is where I am from and where I live and work, and I feel so grateful to be able to spend some of my evening here with you guys today. As you heard, I am with the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Caregivers, and if you're wondering what we do, we very simply help caregivers who are caring for someone who is ill, aging, or disabled through various means and ways, from advocacy to programs to education to training with our partners like you're going to see today. We at RCI really truly believe in Mrs. Carter's mission that we can create and live and be in a world where caregivers are seen, heard, and supported. So today we're going to train in virtual empathy, but there's some things I want to tell you first and foremost, so you're not taken aback when we get started, okay? So number one, I have dual monitors. We live in a very digital age. So if I look somewhere or don't look somewhere and I'm not looking at you, just know I am hearing, seeing, and paying attention to you. I am also trying to pay attention to the chat at the same time. So grace and forgiveness as we go forward. Second thing, in order for you to get the most out of this training and what it means to be virtually empathetic, I refuse to show you a slide deck. Okay? So for the next hour, yes, thank you, Sam. Yes, my good friend. Yes, you have to see it and you have to feel it and you have to hear it. We all have to be in this together. So I know sometimes when we see PowerPoints, we feel like we need to take notes. Sam, I'm going to send this to you first thing tomorrow morning, but I have notes already taken for you. I will provide you a takeaway sheet. That takeaway sheet has everything that I'm going to talk to you about on it. So there's no need for you to worry about taking notes or missing something. Just be here in the space with me, okay? Third thing, I am very big on this. I want you to feel empowered to participate, but don't feel like you have to yell to be heard. I also don't feel like I don't want you to feel like you have to be forced to participate. I told you it's evening here, so I'm trying very hard. I don't want you to feel like you have to be forced to participate. So throughout this presentation, I am going to be giving you a series of sharing questions. This does not mean you have to come off mute and come up with some beautiful answer. I know the material I'm going to give you today takes some time to process. But if you want to participate with me, which I absolutely love, feel free to use your emojis. You can throw stuff in the chat when I throw up these sharing questions. I'll try to monitor it all and we'll see how we end up, okay? So the next thing is I will also be giving you challenges in this training. I would not be doing my job as a trainer if I did not give you a challenge to think about the material I'm going to give you, to show you how you can actively start applying it into your life, into your world, into the spaces that you take up and are a part of. And then the last thing, I want you to know that I'm going to try to stick around as long as Sam will let me, and we will answer some questions. If not, Sam, if you want to give your questions to Sam, she will make sure I get them and I will make sure I answer all of them for you. Okay? So with that being said, I'm ready to get started. And we are going to talk first and foremost about empathy and empathy as a whole. Okay. So I need you to know, if you didn't hear about that very lengthy bio that Sam read, empathy is my bread and butter. I come from a mental health background. So for me, having and operating with empathy, and I do mean externally, internally, within groups, wherever I show up means that I have the power of connection. And if I can make a connection with someone, that means I can understand the place that they're coming from. And if I can understand them, then I can see how we can move things forward to make things better for them. Okay, so if we all agree on that, all right, we're going to start with a sharing question. Okay, so first question I'm going to ask you, and please know, participate however you feel comfortable. I know we're all doing various things trying to keep up in our life and world, but what does it mean to have connections, and how important is that for what you're doing, and what you're doing very specifically virtually, right? So what does it mean to have connections virtually, and how important is that for you? So I'm going to tell you, for my work, most of my work is virtual. So being able to connect with you on a virtual platform is really, really important, okay? But it also can be really, really frustrating, right? It can be really frustrating trying to connect with somebody that is essentially a box, right, with a face in it. But then we think about it, and that face in that box is connected to another person that's somewhere else that's also trying to struggle to connect with us. And it can be frustrating to make that connection, to build that bridge. So today, when I talk to you about virtual empathy, I'm going to talk to you through showing you what it is and telling you a story of how we at RCI learned about it, and how you can take these really simple action steps and apply it in all of your work. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that these things that I'm going to say are not out to reinvent the wheel. You probably heard them a million times. All I'm asking you is to look at this as a whole package. We at RCI realized that the things that we found out by figuring out what it means to make a connection and be virtually empathetic was not something we hadn't heard before. We're all educated people. We all know what it means to be compassionate and kind to each other. We simply looked at these steps as ingredients. And when we really put them together, we created a spectacular recipe. And so to begin any good story, we have to go back in time. And so a few years ago, me and a colleague, a former colleague of mine, were adapting and flipping a program. Okay, so what that means is the program that we were looking at specifically was delivered in person. Everybody that had come through that program with us had done it in person. And what we wanted to do was put it on a video conferencing platform. We wanted to deliver it virtually, and we wanted to deliver it within a caregiver's home. We thought, well, maybe that will be someplace we can reach more people. And as we're discussing flipping this program, making it virtual, we thought, oh, you know what? It's going to be so easy. This is the easiest project we've ever done at RCI. And we've done some hard things and some easy things. This is going to be one of the easier ones. What we're going to do is we're going to make a list, and we're going to send all the materials that the coaches need digitally. And then we're going to train them on our digital platform. And then we're going to set them up with their own Zoom room, if you will. And then they'll deliver. We'll wait for the results. It'll be spectacular. And we'll move on to the next project. All right. Easy. Didn't think anything of it. Moving on. When we started working with that program, and very specifically with the coaches, we started doing role play scenarios. We do them with any program we have just to see how you deliver, where you feel most comfortable, where you feel least comfortable. And as we're going through role playing, we're realizing that we are missing something. As we're watching this program role play being delivered, we realize that this program online seems very flat. It seemed somewhat emotionless, which was very odd considering that this program specifically was for dementia caregivers. And dementia caregiving, and I'm sure we're all well versed in caregiving, it's hard and it's full with lots of emotions. You're dealing with a lot. And for that program to come off as emotionless was very concerning to us. We weren't having the punch that we were used to. And when we started digging a little bit deeper, we realized that we weren't making connections. Okay. The people on the other end of the computer didn't feel like they were connected to us. They thought we were just somebody that shows up on a screen. We tried really hard to kind of figure out what that meant, and we kind of came down to it when we talked to those role play participants that were willing to come along with us and willing to engage with us in conversation, that the connection was lost because it seemed like we were so far away and we couldn't possibly understand what it was like for them to go through this world. And so we realized that we needed a different kind of empathy. We needed virtual empathy. We needed the ability to make connections in different places using video conferencing, telephone, other technologies all at the same time. And we needed to be able to do that naturally, almost seamlessly, and make it seem like we were welcoming you into Mrs. Carter's living room. If you know anything about RCI, please know one of the greatest things that we've ever been taught by our founder was how to make somebody feel welcome, how to make somebody feel at home and at ease with us. And to have a program that wasn't doing that was very startling to us. So we decided to start back at the beginning. We needed to take a step back, and we needed to start with the why. Why were we so concerned about delivering this program virtually? Why was it such a big deal? And I will tell you, we started the project in 2019, so COVID-19 was not on the horizon, but it proved to be a really valuable and pivotal point in our delivery process. We also, through that time, thought that delivering virtually would allow us to reach more caregivers in more ways, and technology was the easiest lifting way to do that. And thirdly and finally, you need to know that at RCI, our goal at the end of every day is to help a caregiver. We at RCI are all family caregivers ourselves. That is something that we take great pride in. We all do that work. We do it through various different activities, through military veteran caregiving, dementia caregiving, caregiving for children with special needs. And we truly believe that we're all only one of four kinds of people in the world. You've either been a caregiver, or you're currently a caregiver, or you're one who will need a caregiver, or you're one who will be a caregiver. And so when we look at it from that perspective, it's critical that our programs and our advocacy efforts are in a place where we meet the rising needs of caregivers, and we're able to meet them in a place where they feel safe and they feel supported. We know versus non-caregiving peers, caregivers are more likely to face poor health outcomes. They have financial insecurities and just overall greater levels of stress and mental health challenges. So, as another sharing question, as another challenge of the day, if you will, I want you to take some time. I want you to contemplate. I want you to think about, what is your why? Why are you doing this? And what does it mean to you? And you probably already know that. It's probably right there. Think about it. And how does it mean for you to show up in this space? When we realized that it was really important for us to deliver our programs virtually and in person, to be able to be really flexible and to be able to make connections, it spurred what I very lovingly like to call the great debate. Because me and my colleague were then faced with another question. If the problem is making a connection, and connection really drives on empathy, and we already know what that's like, and we're not able to display it online, is empathy able to be taught? Are there ways that we can transfer empathy in person to empathy virtually? Or is this something that you can either do really well or you don't do at all? It's one or the other. So, in order to understand that, we had to understand that virtual empathy, what it would do at the end of the day is it would allow a safe space. It would allow a trusting space. We deal with a lot of caregivers that have really intense issues. Sometimes a lot of safety issues come up. And so being able to have that safe space allowed those caregivers to talk to us about what they really needed. And then it also allowed those program participants to focus on themselves for the times they were with us. So our sessions ran about 2 hours. That was 2 hours every other week that they could be with us in their home, and we created that safe space. We found that if we could create that safe space, then those caregivers were more likely to access resources and tell others when they needed help, which again, during COVID-19, that was really pivotal. Everything moved virtually, and a lot of these caregivers were older. Their ages skewed older. They were just learning how to use Zoom, and this was a way for them to safely navigate that with someone that they could trust, that someone that was there to walk that path with them. Okay, so we got all this down. We have a really good foundation, right? So how do we teach people to be virtually empathetic, and what does that mean? And so we started at the very beginning. And one of the first things we thought was, well, what's body language like? And I know that sounds strange, body language when you're talking about video conferencing, but it's really important because we know from research that when we use our body language, when we are in person, we like to show our hands. I always talk to a lot of people. I'm a Southern lady. I use my hands to talk. That's what I do. That's what I'm used to. But showing people your hands is really important because it lets people know that you're safe with us, that I don't have anything in my hands. I'm not trying to do anything with you or to you. I am safe. So we had to teach our coaches, how can we use body language? What do we have in our tiny box, our head in a box? What do we have that we can use? And of course, the first thing that we came up with was facial expressions. We started studying how we showed up in each of our virtual meetings as per normal these days. And we found that when we started meetings and started having difficult conversations, that if our face was very tense, that it made our body tense. And when that happened, we created a disconnect. And it signaled that you didn't want to talk to us here. So we had to do some other research. If we came into a room and we were already tense and scowling, what would happen if we did the opposite? So we're going to play a little activity here. If you want to, you can try with me. You can turn off your camera if you don't want anybody to see you scowl and tense up. But take a minute, take a deep breath, scrunch your face, and scowl. How does it make you feel? Are you going to have some really significant conversations? People going to really be involved with you here? We're going to have a good conversation, right? No. When we tense up, it sends a signal to the person on the other end. This is going to be bad. You don't want to talk with us, okay? So if you tensed up, so if you want to do it again, scowl and tense, take a deep breath and do it. How does it make you feel when you do that? Take a second. Makes you feel tight, like you can't breathe. You can't take a deep breath, right? Right? It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. When we are super tense, it also makes us sound really tense. So if we start a conversation and I'm here tense and wired, right? Yeah, it does, right? So if I start a conversation and this is how I'm looking at you, and I am here to have a very grumpy, yeah, I'm here to have a conversation. It's going to be very difficult, and we're going to have some difficult topics we're going to talk about. And I want you to be open with me and tell me everything about it. Leave nothing out. Are you going to want to do that? But we realized that if we took a deep breath and we took a few seconds and we started, your guard immediately went up, right? Yeah. And we started slowly relaxing our face. So we started training our coaches on how to move your facial muscles, smile, relaxed, and turn on the camera. We discovered that when we entered the room with our eyes open, our faces relaxed, if we were in the mood, we would smile. It immediately made a calm and welcoming atmosphere. We created that in 2 different places at the same time. And again, we realized that when we were open and ready to have these conversations, caregivers were also ready to have these conversations. They were more likely to tell us about their safety concerns. They were more likely to tell us about actual resources that they needed. And at the end of our programs, we found out that by making these connections, not only did caregivers access those resources, they also felt more confident in their caregiving abilities, which then translated to, if you're going to send your loved one to a skilled nursing facility, in this case with our dementia programming. So if you tense up one more time. Tense up and scrunch your face. Now, slowly relax. Let your arms loosey-goosey and take a deep breath. We're all in this space together so that we can help each other be the best that we can be. Caregiving is a journey, not a destination, right? So we figured out our first ingredient is body language. We had to master our facial expressions, right? We had to make sure that we were really aware of how we entered the room. Then we thought, well, can't just be body language, because if that's the case, then boy, we can take this show on the road and I can teach everybody how to do this and it'll be super easy. Why can't everybody do it? Then we started looking, we started listening to our coaches again, and we realized that there was also another ingredient in this little recipe, and it was the verbal language. So in all of our programs, we provided those coaches scripts, some very high level things, some key points that they had to point out in the program and where they could look for the information. We found out that if the coaches did not take the time to be really well versed, to take the time to really hone their craft and how they delivered those topics and those discussions, the sentence fell flat. So it made those caregivers feel like those coaches were reading from a script. It was I call it 2D. It was very two-dimensional. And we're already in a two-dimensional world right now. It was very 2D. And then the caregivers ultimately said, it just feels like you're asking me questions. What are you going to do with it? Oh, and you're going to pull up this worksheet. Okay, so now I'm just doing busy work. I can do this somewhere else. We found that when we did that and we weren't really well versed in the language that we used, the caregiver ultimately felt even more lonely and they felt even more isolated because here's this new world that's supposed to help us connect. And I get on the call with a coach that's well versed in what I'm doing and going through, and they're just reading a script. And the caregivers felt even more isolated. So I'm going to tell you your second ingredient to being virtually empathetic is to really master your language, to know what empathetic language means to you. And I'm going to show you what that means, okay? So remember, we have body language and now we're having verbal language. Those are two ingredients that we have to use together. You cannot use one without the other because this is what happens. I'm going to start with a sentence, very simple sentence. Okay. Hi, my name is Lezlie and I am excited to meet you. Okay, so that's the sentence. So first, no body language, no empathetic language, no verbal or body language with this one. Hi, my name is Lezlie and I am excited to meet you. I don't think you are, Lezlie. I don't think you are. All right. Now let me tell you this. Let me say this sentence with body language without verbal language or without adding something to my sentence, okay? All right. Hi, my name is Lezlie, and I am excited to meet you. I'm open, I'm relaxed, I'm excited for you to be here. But did you feel it? Did it make you feel like you wanted to come and talk to me? All right. So let's pair both things together, okay? So body language, verbal language. So in order to have an empathetic language, and I am meeting somebody for the first time, I'm going to choose a word that shows that enthusiasm. Okay. All right. Let's try it. Let's try it. Here we go. I'm going to put these two ingredients together, and this is how it sounds. Hi, my name is Lezlie, and I am really excited to meet you. Did we see any differences? Did we feel any different? Remember, it's not just seeing, it's not just hearing, it's how we feel. Oh, you believe me, Sam. Thank you. So there you go. Sometimes when we have an empathetic verbal language, it really just means we're adding something on to express our emotion, but we're doing that in a way that's very natural. So you also have to make sure that you're really aware of what makes you sound natural and that you're taking time to practice that. You're taking time to say those sentences. I say that as somebody, all my presentations, I try to sound very natural. I practice a lot. Okay. So it takes time to understand what your verbal empathetic language is going to be and how you use it and what ways to use it, because you don't want to be overly excited and you don't want to be overly serious. We want to make sure people feel comfortable with us. And so we can be serious when we need to be really excited when we need to be. So you have your first two ingredients, right? Body language, verbal language, very important, very important. And so then we were like, well, yeah, but you can't have verbal language without what? You picked it out in the chat. You called me out on it. Tone. Tone. So along with having really expressive features in your video conferencing and on your platforms and delivering virtually, your tone had to be the third ingredient for this recipe for success. Again, I'm telling you, I'm not coming up with anything new. I'm just telling you that we view these as all these things have to happen together in order for you to make that connection on the other end. So it was important that we paired those first two ingredients with how we toned ourselves. We spend a lot of time with coaches going through very difficult topics, going through very lighthearted topics that could not be taken seriously, but we're actually very serious in our dementia program. Sometimes it's funny to caregivers when we talk about taking away the keys. That's a very serious topic. You can see it as funny, but it's very serious. We have to be mindful about these things. So we spent a lot of time figuring out what made that combination. And so I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, but first we're going to say the sentence again, right? So if I say my sentence without using my tone, without using any of my ingredients, this is what it sounds like. Hey, my name is Lezlie and I'm excited to meet you. I'm trying to get you out of that room. That's what that feels like, doesn't it? You're trying to shove me along. Please go. It is late. I am tired. My brain hurts. That's what that tone sounds like. But if you take a few seconds and you lighten your voice just a little bit, slow down slightly, and have a positive inflection, it gives several things at one time. One, your participant, whoever you're talking to, feels very hopeful. They feel like you're there for them. They feel like you're willing to listen to them because you've slowed down your tone, you've said it in a positive manner, you've given them time to process. In a caregiving landscape, information comes at you very fast, and very rarely do people take the time to let caregivers process that information in a time in a way that's good for them. So slow down your explanation, slow down your talking, let caregivers feel at ease, let them ease into it. Remember, they have other things going on in their day. They're not just there to sit and talk with us. They're there to figure out how to be the best caregivers they can be and how to make it through the journey as whole and intactful as they can. Okay? So now that you've done it, you know the three main ingredients for virtual empathy. So one, master open, honest facial expressions or body language. Number two, have your empathetic language or your verbal language that you pair along with your body language. I am really excited to be here. It is really an honor. I know you all are busy, but to take time out of your day to come and listen to me speak, oh man, makes a girl feel good on a Tuesday at 7:30. Step three, cadence or ingredient three, the cadence of your voice, the tone in which you speak. You can instill excitement for the present, you can instill hope for the future, and you can be there with your caregivers. And you can listen to all the hard things and use your voice to be a source of comfort, a source of welcoming, someplace safe for them to land. So I've told you the top three ingredients to being virtually empathetic. I am now going to ask you a question. Feel free to share. You can put it in chat. You can not answer. It's a big one, and it puts myself out there. So here we go. What was your first impression of me when you got into this room and you clicked on that camera? What was the first thing you thought when you saw me? Bubbly, perky, soul sister, love it. Warm, bubbly. Yeah, okay. So here's where I come and I tell you it's a secret. From the moment that I logged on to this screen to when you logged on to your camera and I unmuted, I have applied all three of these ingredients. All three of these things I have done with you, on and off. I've shown you two ingredients at one time, one ingredient. I've shown you all three together, and I've taken all three away. I have shown you throughout the whole 36 minutes we've been here together. Oh goodness, look at my hair. How to be virtually empathetic. I will tell you that when we got this recipe together, we were very excited. And we talked to caregivers about our program and what they loved about it. And we realized, and I'm going to let you in on it, that there was a secret ingredient. So you could have body language, you could have verbal language, you could use your tone, you could make those connections, you could be virtually empathetic, and it would be great. You could do it. But what we heard from caregivers that finished our program, caregivers that did not finish our program, coaches and their experience with caregivers, coaches and their experience with us, that there was one thing that really hit home for everybody. It brought everybody to center and it grounded everybody in the work that they were doing. Whether that's personal fun things or that's work, it was the story. We had been looking all over for this connection piece, and the secret ingredient was in front of our face the entire time. It was the story, not just your caregiver story, but our coach's story on the other end of the screen. If you remember, we at the beginning started with a question. Is empathy an unteachable skill on a virtual platform? Is this something that you either naturally have or you don't? I firmly believe that empathy is based around your journey and your stories, because that journey and that story comes with emotion. Everyone that I have ever met, trained, counseled, befriended, partnered with has all had a story. We at RCI take pride in our caregiver stories. We love to hear your story, the journey you have been on, and how that's been tied to your emotions, your sadness, your grief, your joy, and your love. But in recognizing your story meant that we recognized our own. We all sat down and talked about our caregiving stories and the emotions that were tied to it. And we realized that if we were willing to tell those stories so openly and honestly, it meant that we recognized that emotion in ourselves and could easily recognize it in other caregivers. When we felt that depression and sadness and loneliness and heard a caregiver talk about it, it hit us because we had been there. We knew what that was like, right? We knew that it was hard. We realized that by giving someone the time and space to tell their story, they had beautiful themes of resiliency and strength, loyalty, love, perseverance. So, challenge time. Take a few minutes, take a day, take 2 days, take however long you need. Think of what the theme of your story is. What's your mantra? What makes you think, yeah, I did that and it was good. I fought hard. Think about that reflection, because that reflection helps you make that connection virtually very easily. It helps you recognize when you see a caregiver in a really hard space, when they're having a good day, when maybe things are not so good. So when you think of your story, write it down, write your theme down, write your story down, or find a picture or a poem or music. We've done all of those here at RCI. We've helped our caregivers do all of that within themselves so they can figure out what their secret ingredient is, what their theme of their story is. We realized that in having all those 3 ingredients, that if we paired it with a simple question, can you tell me your story? It created so much within those caregivers, because they finally had someone that asked them how they came to this place. They had someone that was willing to listen to their whole story. We were very, very, very intentional about letting a caregiver tell their entire story from start to end. And we were able to let them be and to have an audience to listen to them captively, because we knew what that was like. We also realized that in letting them tell their story, it did not make them feel rushed through the session. Okay, it gave them time to pause and think about where they had come from and where they were and where they wanted to go. A lot of times, and I'm sure we know we're in a virtual world, it's easy for a meeting leader to rush and get through to the meat of why we're here. Yeah, that's great. Okay, but today we're learning self-care, and I'm going to teach you deep breathing. Oh, yeah. I get it. Yeah. But we gotta go deep breathe over here really quick. It can be really hard for a meeting leader to see the importance of slowing down and letting a caregiver have a stage. And that's what we call it, a stage. Because if you let somebody have the stage, that means they own it. Spotlight on them. And it's their turn to tell the story, and it's your turn to listen and accept it, and accept all the silence that comes with it. A story is never easy to tell. A story is never filled with all rainbows and all sunshine, and as my Sesame Street partners tell me, are sunny days. There's some cloudy days, some stormy days. So it's important that we give a caregiver the space to get through that story and the silence that goes with it. So we have one more activity that I'm going to do with you today. So I'm going to trigger warning everyone. I am going to share with you my story so that you can have some time to hear and feel and listen, and maybe start reflecting my story and how it matches your own and some of those feelings. Okay. So I'm going to tell you that this story does get hard, does end well though. So if you have a hard time hearing about loneliness, grief, substance abuse, suicide, feel free to mute me. Or if you want to see this play out up until I get to that part of my story, I will let you know. And I will give you a warning so that you can mute yourself if you cannot listen to it. Okay? Remember, we're all showing up how we feel best. And I understand stories are hard and you're just beginning your journey and being virtually empathetic. It takes practice, it takes time. Okay? So if I were to tell you my story, I think I would have to start with the question I get asked the most. Why caregiving? Why would you choose to professionally have a career in a field in which you personally did that work and saw the devastation it brought? You saw how hard it was. Why would you choose to do that? And I will tell you that when I think about this question, my answer is always the same. I chose to work in this field and chose to work at RCI because of the after. I have always thought about the concept of after, and it's always been a really big part of my life. Like what happens to a family after a loss, what happens to a community after one of their best members has a terminal diagnosis, one of those shining star members of our community. I learned at a very young age that the after can be a very scary and lonely place. But I have recently learned that the after can be full of hope. It can be positive. It can be what we make it. So I met my best friend the first day of 7th grade, and they came walking up to me, pointed their finger at me, and said, "Hey, me and you, we're going to be friends." That person was new to school, and as I said, it was the first day of 7th grade. And in my head, my first thought when this person did this to me was absolutely no way am I going to be friends with this crazy person who's brand new to this school on the first day of 7th grade, which was in August, and this person chose to wear a leather jacket. Absolutely not. No. 7th grade, this is serious times here. But my best friend, Corey, was never one to take no for an answer. And true to their word, they became one of my closest friends. They were my confidant. They were my cheerleader. They always told me to challenge myself. They understood what it was like to grow up in a hard household, a household that was full of some hard things. So we became best friends, and we continued on like that until high school. And right as we were about to graduate, they told me that their after high school plans did not include going to college with me. They were going to join the military. And I'll be honest, I graduated in 2003. That was a very scary time. It was scary because we knew they were going to go somewhere far away from our very tiny town with one red light. We knew that they were going to miss out on at least 4 years in which we have been together and we had grown up together. And what would that look like? And honestly, for all of us, it felt like we were losing our best friend. But Corey did come home after 4 years away. Trigger warning, trigger warning. But I will tell you that in our longing to pick up where we had left off, we failed to see the toll that the last 4 years had taken on them. We also failed to see what it would be like to try to come back and reintegrate after 4 years away, and we had all grown and changed. We tried very hard for Corey. When we noticed the depression getting bigger and the flashbacks getting closer together, we did shift work. They had a hard time sleeping at night. We'll stay up all night with you. Want to sleep all day? All right. I'll stay up all night to sleep all day with you. Want to stay up all night and all day? With it. We'll do shifts. I'll be with you at night, and then our other friend will be with you during the day. And we'll just be here in case you need it. And our back door is always unlocked. You can come in literally anytime. And I make extra supper at night just in case you're hungry and you finally feel like you can eat. And you can just come and you can warm it up and you can eat. And I don't even have to say anything to you. We tried very hard to care for Corey because for such a long time, Corey had cared for us. And on September the 16th, 2011, Corey took his life. I would say that was it shocked us. It's hard to put into words still after over 10 years. I think it shocked us the most because he was the best of us. He definitely cared for all of us. He introduced me to my husband. He wanted us to be better. He thought that we could create better worlds and better communities if we could just stop and listen to each other. His death was hard, but I will tell you, it gave me drive because it made me want to help and create something because of what he meant to me. I wanted to help other caregivers that were going through similar struggles, that had hard times in understanding what it was like. Because no matter how old or young we are, caregiving revolves all around us. It is a journey in a world that we will live in. So it's important for us to care for each other to make tomorrow better than today. So I will tell you, in looking and listening about my story, that yes, you're right. Caregiving, it's full of ups and downs. No day is ever like the last. And lots of long hours go into this, but I do it because there's never a shortage of things that need to be done. And we at RCI, me, Lezlie Poole, I know that the after can be scary and it can be lonely, but it can be full of hope and it can be full of victories. Because we are all ever only truly one of 4 kinds of people in the world. All right, how'd that feel? Are we still reflecting on it? Did I say anything that made you reflect back? Did you recognize any emotions in yourself and your journey you've been on? Thank you, Sam. Thanks for listening. Virtual empathy comes with so many great things, but also know if you're wanting to input this into your life, into the work that you do, that there are some challenges along the way, okay? So at RCI, our coaches had to learn not only to use their body language, verbal language, and tone, and add that secret ingredient of being aware of their story and asking the caregiver about their own. But they also had to realize that in dealing with so many different emotions, that emotions were very contagious and could cause a coach to accidentally display that emotion when they're not meaning to. So think of a cute, happy baby or a fluffy puppy. It makes us happy, right? Makes you want to smile. The opposite can also happen if somebody's displaying a lot of stress on the screen. So be aware of that. Be aware of the emotions being displayed and the ones that you display back. We also had to learn very quickly the display of online appearances versus reality. It's hard. Sometimes being online and having an online life makes us feel like we have control. Things are put together. Caregiving is no different. We found a lot of our caregivers were scared to be honest about where they were in their journey because of judgment and stigma that was attached to it. We don't ever want you to feel like you have to out yourself or be anything other than who you are. So we had to empower our coaches into getting curious and being really invested into what was really happening and being really ready to ask the questions to find out what the reality was so that we could be ready to move forward in a fundamentally healthy and sound way. Okay. We also had to learn, this is a hard one, the challenge of healthy boundaries. It's hard, right? You have been through a similar journey. You're now helping somebody else that's going through a journey, and it's hard not to be invested. Our coaches and our caregivers work together for months and months on end, at least 2 hours at a time. They share all kinds of things that happen from disappointments and aggravations and frustrations to victories and small wins we find along the way. We learn that healthy boundaries can be established when we're honest about what our programs are and what we do and what we do not do. Our coaches were honest about the caregivers, about with their caregivers and their limitations. Coaches are not counselors. This isn't therapy. I'm trying to teach, I'm going to teach you skills to help you in your journey. And after a certain time, I might not answer because I'm doing self-care or I'm taking care of my family or I'm a caregiver myself. So I need time to do those things. We had to empower our coaches to know their limits and name their limits. And in turn, our coaches empowered caregivers to know their limits and name their limits. And that way, caregivers were built in with these healthy boundaries that they could use within their family units or their neighborhoods and their communities to really talk about what they needed and how they needed people to show up for them. All right. So with that, and our time is near. Oh, I did it. Remember, virtual empathy. I hope you were I hope you were able, as I get tongue-tied, I hope you were able to take away something. And that body language, verbal language, and tone are key ingredients for a recipe for success in making connections virtually and having empathy along the way. But the secret, the story. So make sure you allow someone to have the stage to tell their story, share in their emotions, accept their silence, and give them our time. But you also have to recognize that emotions work both ways and they are contagious, and that online does not equal reality. So get curious and ask the questions. Empower everyone that you meet virtually in your meetings, on your calls, in your work, and in your life to know your limits and name your limits. Remember, virtual empathy is a recipe, and we have to have all the ingredients for this to work. Okay? So I hope you were able to learn something. Again, my name is Lezlie Poole, and I am so grateful for your time. And I think we have like 4 minutes. Sam, I don't know what you want to do.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Lezlie. I know it really resonated with me, and I hope it did with our mentors who are on here today, because it really is exactly what we train our mentors to do and how they're supporting people in this space. So it's really, really powerful and helpful. Yeah, we can absolutely do a couple questions if you have a couple minutes. And then I know there were a couple,
Yeah.
Karen had a couple in the chat.
Yeah. I see one of Karen's.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want me to just take the one I see. I don't know. What's easiest?
Yeah. So Karen had said she had two. So should we mirror the emotion that the person we're speaking with is showing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say Karen, the easiest way I think about this. So one, if I'm talking to a caregiver and they're talking about some really serious topics and I know it's not a time to smile, yeah, I'll get very serious. Now, they may get very upset. I will not get upset with them. That's a boundary, that's emotion contagion. I feel like somebody has to be the calm voice in that situation. Somebody has to be the one that's, what do we need? What resources do we need? You're very upset. I see that. I accept that. I'm with you in this space. What's going to come next after this? I tell my coaches that if caregivers pop on the chat, they pop online with you and something really good has happened to them, mirror that excitement. Be super excited for them. If they made one step in their goals, be excited, hype them up. Small victories are very big in a caregiver landscape. Our research shows that small victories equate to a lot of confidence and a lot of hopefulness, which means that you're more likely to continue the journey. You're more likely to reach out for help. You're more likely to get help for yourself.
And then Karen's other question from earlier, which I
Mhm.
think you touched on a bit, but what role does silence or pause play in empathy?
Yeah, so I think about it like this. I come from a mental health background, and one of the first things that I've ever learned in talking with peers and patients, and we did a lot of skill building. So in my past life, I have a lot of mental health storytelling. That was one of Mrs. Carter's platforms. So she did mental health journalism fellows that are still to this day working at the Carter Center. I work with them a lot to talk about the importance of silence. So in a virtual space, it's sometimes we feel like we need to talk, 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 and we need to fill that space. If we set up the appearance that we can have silence and we can be there, so if a caregiver is very upset, we can sit there and we can be silent. We can, yes, this is hard. You're fine. You're not rattling my cage. I'm here to be with you in this moment. If they're telling their story, allowing them to have silence and to have pauses allows them to organize the story in their head. Because remember, a caregiver's very busy, they're doing a lot of things. So if you're wanting to hear their story, they're going to want to tell you that story in chronological order. So it's important for us to allow them to have some time to organize that information. Very rarely have I come across a caregiver that had a very perfect story all intact, ready to tell me. Usually we bounce around, so giving them that silence and that space and those pauses allows them to be like, oh, this person isn't impatient with me. They're not trying to rush me along. They're allowing me to gather myself so that I can talk to them about this journey I'm on and where I want to go with it.
Wonderful. I have a couple more, but I think
Yeah.
I'll send them your way afterwards and we'll
Okay. All
circle
right.
back. But thank you again,
Yeah.
Lezlie. Thank you everyone for being with us tonight. We'll send that takeaway sheet that Lezlie had mentioned later this week, as well as the recording if you'd like to share it out with anyone in your communities. And just thank you again, Lezlie. It was wonderful to have you
Thank you,
here.
Lezlie.
Everyone else have a
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank
night. Thank
Thank
you all for
you.
you.
joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Leslie. Bye bye.
Bye.